Well, good morning. For those who I don't know, I'm Greg DeCincio. I have the pleasure and the privilege of being president of Jamestown Community College. And this morning I also have the great pleasure and the honor of welcoming Governor Cuomo to be with us here today. In just a moment, you will hear from Chancellor Zimpher, Mike Metzger, and finally, Governor Cuomo himself. But we also have some special guests here today that I would like to take just a moment and acknowledge. First of all, with us today is our county executive, Mr. Greg Edwards. I warned all these people that I know them personally, but I promise to keep it straight. Our state senator, Catherine Young. New York Assemblyman Joseph Giglio. New York Assemblyman Andrew Goodell. Mr. Stan Lundeen, former Lieutenant Governor, and his wife Sarah. His Honor and JCC alumnus, Sam Teresi. Jamestown City Council President and JCC full Professor of Political Science, Mr. Greg Rabb. And I would just quickly like to acknowledge all the members of the JCC Board of Trustees, my bosses, who are here today. If they would wave and let us acknowledge your presence. Thank you. And finally, any JCC students or faculty here, raise your hand and wave at me. There we go. Thank you. By all accounts, this was an incredibly successful session, and the New York State government continues to deliver results for the people of this state as it has for the past 2.5 years. Since taking office, Governor Cuomo has shown that he understands the integral role that New York State's SUNY system plays in training our young people for the jobs of tomorrow. And so he has taken bold steps to ensure that our state system, SUNY system, as well as our private colleges and universities, play a key role in revitalizing our upstate economy. This is why he made sure that academics for all fields were asked to participate in the regional economic development councils. In addition to the REDCs and New York SUNY 2020, which I have to pause and say thank you, Chancellor Zimpher, thank you, Governor Cuomo. JCC was a recipient of a SUNY 2020 challenge grant, which will bring $15 million to the Southern Tier to do exactly what you're talking about in your programs today. Thank you very much. In addition, Governor Cuomo signed Startup New York, which will create tax-free zones around SUNY schools all across the state, allowing businesses and jobs to grow and stay right here in New York. The governor has given academics a real opportunity to help this state turn its economy around. But in order for this program to be successful, some academics will need to step out of their comfort zones so that we can make New York State a global destination for innovators and academics alike. It has truly been an honor to work side by side with Governor Cuomo and his team, and I thank him for his dedication to ensuring that our higher education institutions continue to be the best in the nation. It is now, without a doubt, my pleasure to introduce the Chancellor of the State University of New York, Nancy Zimpher.
And good morning. It's great to be back at Jamestown Community College. Of course, I know I will be back when it's time to inaugurate your new president, Corey Duckworth. But with this standing room only audience, it gives me great privilege to just say to you on a very personal level how very much we have appreciated the leadership of President Greg DeCincio. I had the privilege of traveling with the governor to Jamestown today, and he can vouch for the fact that I filled his ear on what an outstanding leader you have been and where you have positioned Jamestown, and your competitiveness with NY SUNY 2020 just proves that. So I'm thrilled to have that opportunity. It's great to see everyone, to think of the role that JCC has been playing and will play in the future. So I think it's no secret, but I want to say that during the last 2.5 years, SUNY has made it a point to be an economic engine for the revitalization of the state of New York and the business growth and the quality of life of this state. We are partnering across the state with each and every one of our campuses, and I think our champion, no secret about it, is undoubtedly Governor Andrew Cuomo. So we are doing so many things together to better this state. It's these kind of initiatives for our local communities that will build our workforce and build our economy for years to come. And I was thinking of some remarks the governor made the other day about this concept of cradle to career. We're as interested in the early childhood education of our youth as we are in the career success of our graduates. So we've got both ends of the continuum covered. So as soon as the governor announced Startup New York, we began to get ourselves organized. President Zicinko can vouch for the fact that we got the presidents on the phone. We have these, can you imagine, 64 campus calls periodically when big news happens. And we began to talk about how Startup New York will attract not only business, but will help us attract more faculty, will give entrepreneurial experiences to our students, and build the innovation that belongs to New York and makes New York a leader worldwide. In fact, one of the neat things about bringing business to this campus and to this region is that we can increase the opportunity for our students to have internships and co-op experiences that we know will lead to job offers and their ability to stay and live and work in New York. So I know you know, but I want to say we so appreciate at SUNY Governor Cuomo's appreciation for the need for the high-tech jobs of tomorrow and the role our campuses can play. We want to lift up our partnerships with business and industry, and that's why it's my privilege to introduce Mike Metzger from Blackstone Business Enterprises. Mike, your turn.
Thank you very much, Chancellor. It's my honor to welcome the governor to Jamestown, and I thank him for coming here to deliver a message to Western New York. Without a doubt, this is the most business-friendly state government in recent history. People think that our weather here in Western New York is terrible. Well, I want to tell you that the business climate is bright and promising. Never before the business community has been more proactive and dedicated partner in Albany. The governor made this his #1 priority, job creation, and he knew he couldn't do it without the support of the private sector. From his first days in office, he immediately set out to reserve New York State's reputation as the tax capital, to reverse it, of the nation with an aggressive tax-cutting agenda. And this year, the clear winner of this legislative session was Upstate New York. More specifically, upstate businesses and universities. Upstate New York has never seen such a powerful economic boost as we will receive from Startup New York. Over the past 29 months, business owners across the state have had more access and input into how to grow New York's economy. The governor listened to us, worked with us, and is now giving us the need to grow our businesses, create jobs, and keep jobs in New York. I thank the governor for his continued partnership and leadership. I am now pleased to introduce the governor of the great state of New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. First, to Mike Metzger, thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thank you for what you do for the community, and thank you for serving on the Regional Economic Development Council and for doing that public service. Let's give him a round of applause and thank Mike Metzger. Mr. President, we want to thank you. We want to thank you for your leadership. We want to thank you for all you've done for this university and also for the community. You will be leaving us now, we understand, shortly, but your tenure and your imprint and your fingerprint is well upon this institution, and your leadership has taught many people well. Your reputation precedes you. Congratulations on the SUNY grant, because that was a very big deal. The competition was very tough. So if you weren't very, very good at what you did, you wouldn't have won that grant. So there's another proof positive. Let's give the President a round of applause. Chancellor Nancy Zimpher, you saw Nancy just for a few minutes, but you get that sense of her energy and her dynamism, and she has re-energized the entire SUNY system. It's never been better. Let's give her a round of applause. Pleasure to be with you, Madam Chancellor. My friend, who's been very helpful to the entire state over the past year, your mayor has been doing double duty. He's been running the city, and he's been running to Albany, which is a long run. And he's been giving us a lot of advice on how the state government can better serve city governments. Mayor Teresi, pleasure to be with you again. Your county executive, who's done an outstanding job, County Executive Greg Edwards, pleasure to be with you, County Executive. Personal point of privilege. The Lundeen family, very close to the Cuomo family, professionally and personally for many years. I had the good fortune of spending a lot of years with the Lundeens, and I learned a lot. The Lundeen family and the Cuomo family go back to the time of Governor and Lieutenant Governor, different Governor Cuomo, so it's a pleasure to be with you. Stan and Sarah, pleasure. And my colleagues from Albany, Senator Young, Assemblyman Goodell, Assemblyman Giglio, I want to thank them for their partnership, and I want to thank them for another extraordinary legislative session, and for their leadership. You know, we've had a good 3 years in terms of progress for state government. I don't know if you remember before, state government couldn't get a budget done on time. It was all about dysfunction. It was all about chaos. It was all about scandals. And the past few sessions have been different. We're not bumping up against perfection yet, but the government is working. 3 budgets on time, we pass laws, etc. And people say to me all the time, well, you know, what's the difference? It was so bad for so long, and now it looks like government is working once again. What's the difference? And I wish I could take credit for it, but I can't. A couple of years ago when I started, we did have a conversation, myself and the senators and the assemblymen, and we basically said, look, the situation is very bad. The government hasn't been working. We have to try something different. And it was as simple as this. We said, look, we have our politics. Some people are Democrats, some people are Republicans. We come from different parts of the state. You have downstaters, you have upstaters. But we have to be willing to put the politics aside, and we have to remember that we are New Yorkers first. Before being a Democrat, before being a Republican, we are a New Yorker. And let's act as New Yorkers. And let's find the commonality rather than the differences. And let's find out how to get to yes, because in gridlock, everybody loses. And we put our politics aside, and we focused on what works best for the state. And we've actually made the state government work once again. And I take my hat off to my colleagues in the legislature who've done extraordinary work, 3 of whom are here today. Let's give them a round of applause for what they do. And we had another good legislative session this year, which just ended a couple of weeks ago. and I want to talk to you about one of the highlights of what we accomplished. For the state government, the number one mission, no doubt, is about creating jobs. That's what it's all about. We do a lot of good things. Past few days, I've been working on a law that we passed that changes the penalties for texting while driving. You heard about a lot of the SUNY programs we've been working on. A lot of good work. But what is the priority? What is the one thing the state government does that it has to do? And that is create jobs and get the economy running. Because if we get the economy running, then everything else takes care of itself, plus or minus. If we get the economy running, then Mayor Teresi will take care of the city. County Executive Edwards will take care of the county if there's an economy running. Families, individuals will have a career. So it's our main focus always is about the economy. It's especially true for upstate New York. Why? Because the upstate New York economy has been in decline for decades. Now, the downstate economy isn't doing great either, but that's more a recent function of what happened with the national economy. Upstate New York, we've had this problem in truth 20, 30, 40 years. Truth, we have never really readjusted after we lost the manufacturing economy. That's how long we've been struggling with the upstate economy. Our approach was twofold. We said, look, step one is we have to do something about the reality and the perception that New York is a high-tax, anti-business state. It is what you hear from every business owner. It's what you hear all across the country. New York is anti-business. You wonder why businesses are leaving? You wonder why young people are leaving? Because that's our reputation. And it's not just the reputation. There's a reality basis in the reputation. If you are the highest tax state in the nation, you have no economic future. So step one has been attacking the reality of our taxes. That's why we passed the property tax cap for the first time ever that capped the increase in the property taxes, which I believe is the most onerous single tax in the state of New York, is the property tax. Worse than the business tax, worse than the income tax, it's the property taxes. And we passed the cap. It can't go up more than 2% unless a supermajority votes for it. That's why we cut taxes for the middle class. Middle class, broadly defined, $40,000 to $300,000 in income, will pay the lowest tax rate in 60 years, believe it or not, this year. 60 years, the lowest tax rate. And the way we got the money to cut the taxes is we controlled government spending. And we hold the state government spending down to 2%, and that's what actually got us the revenues to do the tax cut. So we've taken a lot of hard but necessary steps in the first 2 years. We also said, beyond just cutting taxes, we needed an affirmative plan to start to create more jobs and bring more jobs to New York. And that is a formula that looks at regional-based, higher ed-driven public-private sector partnerships. Regional-based, higher ed-driven public-private sector partnerships. It's a mouthful, but it says the jobs are coming out of the schools, which is what's happening in this state, this nation, around the globe. Where we're creating jobs, you're seeing they're coming out of institutions of higher learning. They're the next phone cell. There's the next chip, the next application. It's the 25-year-old with the next bright idea. That's where the jobs are coming from. They're coming from regions that work together. There is no city, there is no town economic development plan, there is no county plan. They are regional plans. And they are plans where the private sector works best with the public sector. Because government doesn't create jobs, the private sector creates jobs, but the private sector needs a partnership with government because government can actually frustrate that job growth. So that's been the basis for what we've been doing. The sweet spot for our economic plan is where entrepreneurialism meets the regional economy, meets academia. That's where we have been focusing. We call it the E-squared plan. the education economic development continuum. In the old days, they used to talk about education separately from economic development. It doesn't work that way anymore. Education blends into economic development if it's done right. So you really have a continuum. It starts, as Nancy says, at the cradle. It starts with early education and getting the best early education we can, through primary, through secondary, through investing in the SUNY system, and then having an environment where you're actually creating the jobs because you have an environment that is a pro-growth, pro-business environment. And it all happens on a continuum. That's why over the past 2 years, regional economic development councils, because it's about the region, SUNY 2020, investing in SUNY, innovation hotspots, venture capital funds, New York Open for Business, Business Incubator, all pushing to the same point along that spectrum. It is working. It's working better than we would have anticipated. We have 7.6% unemployment rate was the last number, which is the lowest since 2009, and we've only really been at it for 2 years. So all the arrows are pointed in the right direction, and the trajectory for the state has changed. But we want to bring all the pieces together, and we want to bring it to scale and do it on a bigger level than we've been doing it. Because the upstate economy especially is a big problem, and a big problem requires a big solution. What is the greatest obstacle to economic development for upstate New York? If you just ask a businessman, you ask anyone on the street, what's the greatest obstacle? The answer you'll get time and time again is high taxes. What would the best possible scenario be? If you had a magic wand and you said, I want to grow the upstate economy and here's the magic wand, what would you do? You would wave the magic wand and say, I want no taxes in upstate New York. That's what you would do with your magic wand. That's what we're doing with Startup New York. It is that simple. We're taking that sweet spot, entrepreneurialism, meeting universities, meeting regional economies, and we're making those sweet spots tax-free zones. So, all SUNY campuses, statewide, 64 campuses, 55 of the 64 in upstate New York become tax-free communities. Private schools can become tax-free communities up to the tune of 3 million square feet, entrepreneurial tax-free communities. Or a SUNY or a private campus can designate an area in the vicinity up to 200,000 square feet, can be private property, can be down the block, can be across town, as a tax-free community space. When you say tax-free, what do you mean? I mean really tax-free. No caveats, no exceptions, no business tax, no corporate tax, no sales tax, no property tax, no franchise fees, no income tax for the business owners or for the business employees. No tax whatsoever. It cuts taxes where we need the help most, which is upstate New York. Some people say, well, cut taxes, that's great. But cut taxes for everyone, everywhere. I wish I could. I wish I could. To cut taxes 1 point, our income tax rate is about 8%, the top rate. To cut income taxes 1 point from 8 to 7 costs $6 billion. How much is $6 billion? It's all the money in the world. Our state budget, I've never seen $6 billion. If I'm governor for 20 years, I'll never have $6 billion to spend. 1 point, $6 billion. Why? Because to cut income taxes statewide 1 point, you have to cut taxes in downstate New York. And that's where the population is. So it's very expensive to cut taxes even 1 point statewide. And if I brought taxes from 8 to 7, you know what it would do for upstate New York? Nothing. If we brought taxes from 8 to 6, nothing. if we brought them from 8 to 5? Nothing. Why? Because the competition for us, when they're leaving us, when you go to the airport and you say, where are you going? What do they say? Florida, Texas, Carolinas, no income tax states. That's our competition. So to be really competitive, you have to be at 0 because your competition is at 0. And let's focus on cutting taxes where we need to cut the taxes, which is upstate New York, because downstate New York isn't doing great, but they're doing a lot better than upstate New York, and they have been doing better for a long, long time. This is really an upstate New York problem, so we're cutting the taxes where we need to cut the taxes. We also have in this program, we want to make sure we protect existing businesses. These tax benefits are for startup businesses that are connected to the college campus and the college curriculum. There is a specific prohibition that you can't use these tax credits to put any business that would be in competition with any business already operating in the region. And we want to do this on a scale that makes a difference. So when we say SUNY campuses and we say private universities, that adds up to 120 million square feet. How much is 120 million square feet? It is more space than the commercial space in San Francisco and Philadelphia combined. It is more commercial space than the commercial space in Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse combined. My friends, this is not a little niche program. This is a massive amount of space in upstate New York that will be 0 taxes for businesses. I think this is a game changer in the impact of what it can do for upstate New York. And we have an advantage built in, because those other states that have 0 taxes, the problem is you have to go live there. Here, you get to have 0 taxes and live in the greatest state in this country, the great state of New York. We talked about, when we started this session, New York Rising, and New York rising from the ashes. We had just come through Hurricane Sandy that was devastating in a lot of parts of downstate New York. Upstate New York, we've been fighting against this downturn in the economy for decades. And we said, as a collective, we believe New York's best days were ahead, and that New York is going to rise up from these problems, and the problems are not going to defeat us. We're going to rise up from these problems. I think in terms of economic development for upstate New York, that is exactly what this program is going to do. It takes our greatest liability and eliminates it. The liability is the high taxes. That is our problem. And that is our only problem. And there's actually good news and liberation in that. When you ask a businessman, why are you leaving? When you ask a young person, why are you leaving? Nobody ever says, I'm leaving upstate New York because I want to. They say, I'm leaving because I have to. Think about it. My wife got a job, I have to leave. I can't afford the taxes, I have to leave. My business left, I have to leave. I have to leave is a lot different than I want to leave. They don't want to leave. We've been forcing people out, forcing businesses out, forcing young people out because of this tax problem that we've had for years and years and years. Eliminate the liability, and the assets will rise to the surface. And we have every asset imaginable. I spent 8 years in the federal government. I worked in every state in this nation, literally. There is no state that has what we have in New York. You name it, we have it. We have the best workforce of any state. We have the best higher education facilities, the best health care facilities, the best geography, the best history, the best diversity. We have everything any state could imagine. We have anything you could possibly need. If you needed to pick a state to raise a family, you would pick the state of New York. We have every asset you can imagine. It's just the liability overcame it. And I believe this is going to be the first step towards a fundamentally different equation for this state. You make this a business-friendly state, you remove that tax obstacle, and you're talking about a different state. And for upstate New York, this is big enough to make a dramatic difference. And I believe it will. And it will if we work at it together. And we remember what made this state the Empire State in the first place. And we work together, it will happen once again. Thank you for having me today. It's been my pleasure.